To you, it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to be doing some low-carb recipes. I've done this program for years, and the #1 request that I get and have gotten throughout the years are please, please, please do like diabetic recipes or low-carb recipes. So I really have worked hard on developing some different things. We've done some programs in the past. We're doing another one today of low-carb eating, because you can eat healthy, delicious food and it not be full of carbohydrates. So if you're watching your glucose intake, or if you're a diabetic, or you're just eating a low-carb diet, these are the kinds of foods that you want to be eating. We are going to make a carb-friendly Philly cheesesteak. We're going to make a loaded cauliflower instead of the loaded baked potatoes. We're making loaded cauliflower, and then zucchini fries. So let's get started. Now, I have a pan that is hot. We are going to go ahead and add in a couple of tablespoons of butter and let that be melting. We're also going to add a little bit of olive oil, because butter does not have the higher temperature, cooking temperature, as an oil, as an olive oil. So we want to increase the temperature of the cooking of the butter without it burning. I have here, and I'm going to show you in just a second, but I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit to the pan. Philly cheesesteak is traditionally made with ribeyes. You know, but that can be a little expensive. So what I've done here is I am using sirloin that I have sliced very, very thin. So I'm going to add some of that to the pan, because I'm going to have to do this in batches. Because if you add all of this at one time, what's going to happen is your beef or your meat, and no matter what it is going to steam instead of getting good and brown. So we're going to do it in batches. Now, I'm just putting a little splatter guard on there because I don't really want to have grease all over me. I've already got some sliced, but I wanted to show you how to do it. Now, this is just a beautiful sirloin steak. It's about 1 inch thick. I'm going to cut it in half because I want smaller pieces. Then I've got a very sharp knife, fingers tucked, cut it into really, really thin strips. You don't want thick chunks. If you find that it's a little hard for you to slice, pop it in the freezer for about 15 minutes, and that will firm up the meat to where it makes it a tiny bit easier to cut. And a sharp knife is essential for this dish. And I'm doing mine, as I always do, on a separate plastic board, because I do not put raw meat on my wooden cutting boards. Now, the goal of this is really not to cook it through, but to get a good brown crisp on it. And I need to find my tongs. I'm still working out of this kitchen that's not my normal working area, and we're almost done with the new set. These are grilling tongs, a little long, but they're fine. Just gonna flip these over. See how brown they're getting? They're getting good and golden brown. That's what you want. That browning adds a lot of flavor. This takes a little bit of time, but that's okay. It's worth it. Okay, we're just browning those. I'm going to turn them over and let the other side get some good golden caramelization on it. I'm going to actually turn my heat up a little bit now that I've got something in there. Oftentimes, your temperature, well, not oftentimes, all of the time, your temperature will drop immediately when you put something cold into a hot pan. and it lowers the temperature that you're cooking on. Okay. It doesn't have to all be exactly golden brown, but you do want to cook it through because it's going to go into some other ingredients. So we'll just let that go for a second. In the meantime, you know, a traditional Philly cheesesteak has onions and peppers in it. So I'm going to slice up a couple of onions. I'm using white onions. You can add whatever kind of onion that you want. Okay, I've got 2 white onions here. Vidalia onions are really good in Philly cheesesteak. I think Vidalia onions are good in anything. You could use yellow onions, you could use red onions, you could use whatever kind of onion that you wanted. But a traditional Philly cheesesteak has the onions and peppers. Now, instead of a high-carb bread, we are going to use peppers. I'm baking these in some green pepper. Alrighty, now, just slice it in half and then in little small pieces. Again, a sharp knife is essential. Fingers tucked back. Just gonna set that to the side. I have 1 red pepper because I love the flavor of red pepper. Now, if you don't wanna add an extra pepper, you don't have to do this, but I really like the sweetness that it adds. And it's my favorite pepper. So you use what you want. If you want to do another green pepper, you can. But you could also just leave the extra pepper out. I just really like the flavor. Okay? I'm just prepping all my ingredients. I'm going to get that beef out of there in just a second. Getting my peppers and my onions prepped. Doke. Love them. This is so healthy, and these are all lower carb foods. Onions do have a little bit, but they're not enough to really hurt you. You know, you're not eating a ton of them. You're getting it mixed in with some other things. All right, now I have a bowl here that what I'm gonna do, oh yes, that looks so good. I'm actually going to take this batch out and put in the bowl, and I'm gonna put another batch in. I'm gonna do the same thing until I have all of that beef cooked. So let's get that out of the skillet. If you need to add a little more oil, you can. I really need those tongs. So let's get that. I'm gonna leave that 1 piece in there because I forgot to turn him over. That's okay. And all of the fond in the bottom of the pot is just simply gonna add a lot of flavor. So let's put some more in there. Stand back, because it will splatter just a little bit. I probably can get away with 3 batches on mine. Okay, I'm just gonna let this brown. I'm gonna wash up my hands, and when we come back, I'm gonna chop up some mushrooms. I'm just gonna brown off the rest of the steak. When I come back, I'll show you how to continue this wonderfully low-carb Philly cheesesteak. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now our steak, I put the final batch in there, and I've got some baby portobello mushrooms, and I want to show you, if you're going to use them right away, you can rinse them. You do not want to use the stems, and they just come right out. All you got to do is just twist it, and it comes right out. These are tough. They're great for stocks or things like that, but not for, you know, to use every day. And then I'm just going to slice these into, you know, a slice is about the same size as the peppers and onions. These cook a lot quicker. My cutting board's running out of room. If you don't like mushrooms, you don't have to put these in there. It's up to you. And you can use white button mushrooms or shiitakes, or these are baby portobellos. Whatever you like is fine. Okay, I'm just chopping these up. We're going to saute these vegetables. Now, you will need your oven preheated to 375 degrees, or, you know, somewhere in that neighborhood. This is not an exact science recipe, so if you're baking something else at 400, it's okay. And you will need 4 green peppers that you've cut in half and stemmed. All right, now I'm not, you know, some of you may be looking at this saying, but you're not cooking that steak all the way through. No, I'm not, because it's going to bake in the oven. It's not necessary. And again, if you want to use ribeye, you can. This is sirloin. Either one is fine. Same skillet. Add a little more butter. Leave all those drippings and juices down in there. You don't want to lose that. Let's add some butter. A couple more. About a tablespoon or so, and a little more olive oil. And we're going to saute the peppers first, the peppers and onions. And I'm making a mess as usual, but that's okay. The end result is so worth it. I'm not going to add the mushrooms right yet, because they don't take as long to cook. All right, we're just going to saute those until they are softened, just a couple of minutes. While that's going, we're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. Now, you know we've not added any salt or pepper up to this point. This is a ½ teaspoon, so I'm going to add 2 of those, and then a ½ teaspoon or so of freshly ground pepper, and a little bit of paprika for flavor and for color. And when they start softening just a little bit, I'm going to add the mushrooms and the steak back in there. Okay? Now, for your peppers, let's move that up here so we can see what we're doing. You want to take some sliced provolone cheese, or mozzarella is fine if that's what you have, and put some in the bottom, because, you know, Philly steak and cheese has cheese in it, and a lot of it. Authentic Philly steak and cheese, they say, at the original place in Philadelphia. I've not tasted it. Went by it once, but I didn't get a cheesesteak. Says you got to use the Cheese Whiz. I don't know if that's true or not true, but I'm using provolone because that's what I like in my Philly cheesesteak. You want a cheese that will melt and be nice and crumbly, and not crumbly, but melt and gooey and delicious. Just put a piece of that on the bottom. And of course, we're going to add more. All right, now we're going to add our mushrooms to our pepper and onion flavoring. And I am making extra because, you know, you might have some people that don't want the green pepper base. And you can always preserve this and add it to, put it in your freezer, and then you've got the mixture ready to go anytime you want it. You could serve this as it is without the pepper and just have a wonderful steak and pepper and onion filling. You can do anything you want. I'm just gonna add that meat right back in there, and any accumulated juices, use my tongs. Look at that, how good that looks. And what you wanna do is let that go for just a minute to kind of soften those mushrooms. They're gonna exude a little bit of moisture. That's perfectly fine. I think I am gonna add just a touch more salt. If you wanted to add some cheese to this and melt the cheese in there, you could do that too. But we're gonna add some right on top. So we're just gonna let that go for just a minute, let that soften, and then we will put that mixture in our peppers, okay? Now, let's get started on some, let me grab something real quick right here. We're gonna make a loaded cauliflower dish to go alongside this. You could take your cauliflower, cut it into florets, and boil it in some water, or you can do what I'm doing, which I'm finding is an easier way to do my cauliflower, and that is cut it. I like to cut it in half. This knife is not quite big enough, but we'll make it work. Cut my cauliflower in half, and then take your smaller paring knife, cut out the core, and then cut it into florets, which is fine, and pop it in a microwavable dish with just a couple of tablespoons of water, and microwave it for about 8 minutes. It steams perfectly, and you're not cooking away the vitamins and the nutrients that are in the cauliflower. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna put this in a bowl and pop it in the microwave for about 8 minutes. I'm gonna cover it and let it just steam. And you're retaining all of the vitamins and minerals. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break. All I'm gonna do is take this mixture and put it in our peppers, put another piece of cheese over top of it, and then pop that in the oven and let that bake while we finish up our cauliflower and our zucchini. I'm gonna take a quick break, clean up my mess, and when I come back, we're gonna wrap it up. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now all I did was put the meat mixture in the peppers, cheese over top of that, and popped them in the oven. And we are gonna get started on our zucchini. Now what I have, and for this recipe I really do like a smaller zucchini. Just take them, cut them in half again, and then cut them into spears. That is just an easier way to do it. And of course, these are washed. Zucchini is one of my favorites. I love. Really and truly though, honestly, I love all vegetables. I'm a big veggie eater. I always have. Well, not always. When I was little, I was like every other kid out there. I thought vegetables were nasty. But once I hit about 16, oh, loved it. Now, for this recipe, you're gonna need a lined baking sheet. I already have some pork rinds ground in this pan mixed with some almond flour. But I want to show you, if you don't have a food processor, you can put them in a Ziploc bag and beat them like we do, nuts or other things. But I'm going to use my little food processor and grind them up because it really does make them very, very fine. And you can even do this ahead of time. Do all of your bag of pork rinds and just put them in a Ziploc bag and keep them. You can do this ahead because you're gonna, you know, they really are very useful for a lot of different recipes. Okay? Now, let me just get rid of this. So just mix that together with a little bit of salt and pepper because I buy plain pork rinds for this. This is a ½ teaspoon measure, so, you know, around a teaspoon of salt and a little bit of pepper in there. I have 2 eggs and some heavy cream. You could use half and half if you wanted to. I just prefer the heavy cream. It's actually lower in carbohydrates. You could also use water. I find the cream helps the zucchini to stick. So let's get a breading station set up here. So I've got my zucchini, I've got my egg mixture, and my pork rinds mixed with almond flour. If you don't have any almond flour, it's okay. You can just use pork rinds with no flour in there. It works, it's fine. Now, take a zucchini, dip it in the egg mixture. That heavy cream really helps this to adhere. Roll it in your pork rinds and put it on a baking sheet, 400-degree oven, and you will have a wonderful, delicious, crispy zucchini fry. You know, if you're eating low carbohydrates, you don't want to be eating a lot of potatoes. Potatoes, although they're good and they have a lot of vitamins and minerals in them, they are very high in carbohydrates. So if you are eating a low carb diet, you know, you just have to find other ways to have the familiar flavors that you like. Now, does this taste like a French fry? No. But does it give you that crisp texture and that wonderful crunch that a lot of the melt in your mouth flavor of a potato? Yes, it does. And that's what we're trying to do, is just mimic the texture and that goodness. And you've got something you can pick up and eat. I'm just gonna keep coating all of my zucchini and get it on this sheet pan, drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil, and get it in the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes or so. I'll be right back. I'm just gonna keep breading these and then get them in the oven. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now our cauliflower has been steamed. Remember, we just put it in the microwave and I've drained it and just put it in a single layer on or inside a baking dish. Now, I'm gonna add a little salt to that because I did not salt the cauliflower when I put it in the microwave. You could also boil it on the stove if you wanted to. Either one, just drain it, make sure it's good and drained. Now, this is going to be a loaded cauliflower because we don't eat potatoes when we're eating low carb. I have in here half a block of cream cheese, some sour cream, and some heavy cream just to kind of thin it out just a little bit. I'm gonna mix this together. Start out slow so you don't splatter yourself. Just want to whip that until it's just combined. Okay. Now remember, this is a loaded cauliflower like you would do your baked potato, only we're not doing a potato. I'm gonna add a little cheddar cheese and a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I have here some bacon, because everything tastes better with bacon. You could use turkey bacon if you wanted to. You could leave it out if you wanted to. Up to you. Think what you like on your baked stuffed potatoes. And that's what we're gonna put over top of this cauliflower. Hey, bacon happens to be one of my favorite ingredients, as you know. And then some green onions. I don't think I need all those, probably 4, 2, 3 is probably plenty. Slice these thin. Okay, stir that, combine that. Add it to the mixture. Stir that to combine. Oh. You could dot it with some butter if you wanted to. I don't think you need it. I think you've got enough of the richness in the potato mixture. And then just kind of spread this out over top of your cauliflower. And then you're gonna pop it in the oven for about 15 minutes until that all melts together.